Sensory hook. You ease yourself out of bed and make your way toward the kitchen while the house is still quiet. The floor feels cool beneath your feet. Sunlight begins slipping through the window, painting soft lines across the counter. Before breakfast, before coffee, before you even think about checking your phone, your hand reaches almost automatically for a glass. You fill it with water, take a long drink, and wait for that familiar feeling of relief. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. Instead, you still feel a little sluggish. Perhaps you notice a brief wave of dizziness when you stand upright. Your mouth feels dry again sooner than you expected. Within an hour, you find yourself wondering why a full glass of water didn't seem to change very much. You probably dismiss it as getting older. Most people do. After all, you've been told for years that staying hydrated simply means drinking more water. It sounds sensible, and often it is. Yet every single morning, before that first sip ever reaches your stomach, your body has already begun making thousands of tiny decisions about where water will go, how much it will keep, and what it may already be missing. Those decisions happen quietly, without asking for your attention. Your kidneys, hormones, blood vessels, and even individual cells are already working together long before your morning routine truly begins. You never feel those conversations taking place, but you experience their results throughout the day. That is why this simple moment in your kitchen may be more important than it appears. The glass in your hand is only one part of a much larger story unfolding inside you. But if drinking water isn't always enough, what exactly is your body asking for? Curiosity gap and question lock. That question has become surprisingly controversial. Spend just a few minutes looking at health advice online, and you'll quickly discover two completely different stories. One insists that drinking salt water every morning is a remarkable habit that can boost energy, improve hydration, and even transform your health. The other warns that adding salt to your water is reckless and should never be done under any circumstances. Both claims sound confident. Neither tells you very much. The easy explanations are also the most tempting. You may hear that it helps your body detox. It doesn't work that way. You may be told the secret lies in making your water more alkaline. That is not the explanation either. Others point to ancient traditions as though age alone proves something is scientifically correct. History can offer valuable observations, but it is not the same as understanding why the body behaves the way it does. The most interesting part of this conversation is rarely discussed because it requires a little more patience than a catchy headline. Almost nobody explains what is actually happening inside your kidneys, your bloodstream, and your cells before you ever notice the effects yourself. What if the real answer isn't hidden in an expensive supplement or an exotic ingredient? What if the clue has been sitting quietly in a container inside your own kitchen all along? Not because it is magical, but because it participates in a biological system your body relies on every hour of every day. The real explanation has nothing to do with trends. It has everything to do with physiology. And before explaining why sodium behaves this way inside the body, I need to be honest about something. Anti-influencer credibility firewall. That honesty matters because this topic has become one of the most confusing conversations in modern wellness. You can find thousands of videos promising that a pinch of pink salt every morning will restore your energy, sharpen your mind, balance your hormones, and solve problems you may have struggled with for years. Electrolytes are often presented as the answer to every afternoon slump. Some voices even suggest that everyone, regardless of age or health, should begin each day with salt water, as though one simple habit could fit every human body. Then there is the opposite message. Salt is described as something to fear. Avoid sodium completely. Remove it whenever possible. Any amount is treated as harmful, without asking who the advice is for or why it might apply. I find both extremes frustrating for the same reason. They ask you to accept conclusions without showing you the biology that leads there. Your body deserves a better explanation than slogans, whether they sound optimistic or alarming. The version most people hear is simple. Salt is either a miracle or a mistake. The version science presents is far more interesting. Sodium is an essential mineral, but its effects depend on how your kidneys regulate fluid, how hormones respond to changing conditions, whether you are adequately hydrated, what medications you take, and whether conditions such as high blood pressure, heart failure, or kidney disease change the equation. That may sound less exciting than a miracle claim, yet it is infinitely more useful because it respects the complexity of the human body. Once you understand the mechanism, you no longer have to rely on personalities, headlines, or trends to decide what makes sense. The remarkable part is that the science does not need exaggeration. The quiet conversations taking place between your organs, your bloodstream, and your cells are fascinating enough on their own. Almost nobody explains that hidden system, which is exactly where our journey begins. So let's start with what actually begins happening inside your body the moment you wake up. Soft CTA number 1. If you appreciate taking the time to understand why your body works the way it does, rather than simply collecting another health tip, then you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel is built for. Every conversation here begins with the science, follows the evidence where it leads, and ends with practical guidance that respects both the complexity of the human body and your ability to make informed decisions. There is no pressure to accept bold claims or chase the latest wellness trend. If thoughtful, evidence-based explanations like this are useful to you, consider staying with us. There are many remarkable stories hidden inside everyday biology, especially as we grow older, and they deserve more than a 30-second headline. With that foundation in place, we can finally leave opinions behind and turn our attention to something much more reliable. Now let's follow the journey of that first glass of water. Mechanism chain. Now let's follow the journey of that first glass of water. Long before you lifted the glass, your body had already been hard at work. While you slept, you quietly lost water through every breath you exhaled, through your skin, and through urine produced overnight. Across an entire day, those invisible losses can easily total between 1 and 2 liters, depending on your environment, your activity, and your health. You rarely notice them because they happen gradually. Your body does. A younger body usually responds with a strong feeling of thirst. As we age, however, that signal often becomes less reliable. Research has shown that many adults over 65 experience a reduced thirst response, meaning the body may already need fluid before the brain creates the urge to drink. You can become mildly dehydrated without feeling particularly thirsty at all. But water is only one part of the equation. The moment water enters your digestive system, your body begins asking another question. Where should this water go? That decision depends largely on sodium, the major extracellular electrolyte. In simple terms, sodium is the mineral that helps determine how much water remains in the fluid surrounding your cells, where nutrients, oxygen, and waste products constantly move. This happens through a process called osmosis. Osmosis is simply the natural movement of water from one area to another to maintain balance. Water follows concentration gradients. Where sodium goes, water often follows. That relationship allows your body to carefully distribute fluid, instead of letting it move randomly between tissues and the bloodstream. The next stop is your kidneys, remarkable organs that quietly filter around 180 liters of fluid every single day. Nearly all of that fluid is reclaimed before it leaves the body. Your kidneys are not simply removing waste. They are making thousands of tiny adjustments every minute, deciding how much water and sodium should stay and how much should leave in urine. They do not make those decisions alone. Several hormone systems constantly provide instructions. Aldosterone tells the kidneys to retain more sodium when necessary, helping preserve fluid volume. Antidiuretic hormone, also called vasopressin, signals the kidneys to conserve water instead of allowing excessive losses. The renin-angiotensin system acts like a sophisticated communication network, monitoring blood pressure and circulating volume, then coordinating responses to maintain stability. Together, these systems protect blood pressure, support circulation, and keep your organs supplied with oxygen-rich blood. They also maintain serum sodium within a remarkably narrow range, typically between 135 and 145 millimoles per liter. Even small deviations outside that range can affect how cells function. The importance of sodium extends even further. Every nerve impulse traveling through your body depends on sodium and potassium moving across cell membranes in milliseconds. Every muscle contraction, from lifting a grocery bag to the steady beating of your heart, relies on those same electrical gradients. Viewed this way, sodium is not simply something you sprinkle onto food. It is woven into nearly every system that keeps you alive. Yet context matters just as much as biology. Drinking plain water is essential, but in certain situations it can pass through the body quickly if sodium and other electrolytes are out of balance. At the same time, consuming excessive sodium can increase blood pressure and create serious health risks, particularly for susceptible individuals. Many people already consume more sodium than recommended through processed foods alone, while older adults remain uniquely vulnerable to both dehydration and sodium imbalance. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. But this is exactly where many well-intentioned people accidentally work against their own biology. Contrast frame and common mistake. That is where many people unintentionally begin working against the very system designed to protect them. You wake up feeling tired, so you drink several large glasses of plain water as quickly as possible because you've always heard that more water must mean better hydration. Or perhaps you see a viral video recommending a precise amount of salt stirred into water every morning, and it seems simple enough to copy without a second thought. Both reactions are understandable. Both are based on the hope of doing something good for your body. Yet neither asks the question your body is actually asking. Hydration is not a contest to see how much water you can drink, nor is it a recipe that works identically for everyone. Your kidneys, hormones, and blood vessels are constantly adjusting to your age, activity level, medications, and overall health. A person taking a diuretic for high blood pressure, someone living with chronic kidney disease, and an otherwise healthy adult do not process fluids in exactly the same way. This is why context matters so much. Drinking excessive amounts of plain water too quickly may not improve hydration the way you expect, while adding unnecessary salt because an online trend recommended it can increase sodium intake beyond what your body actually needs. The average diet in many countries already provides more sodium than recommended, often without people realizing it. You are taught simple rules because they are easy to remember. The challenge is that your biology is far more sophisticated than a simple rule can capture. Once you understand that, the question is no longer whether salt is good or bad. It becomes something much more interesting. So why has salt earned such a confusing reputation in the first place? Belief reframe. The idea that salt is always harmful did not appear out of nowhere. It grew from an important public health goal. For decades, researchers observed that excessive sodium intake could contribute to higher blood pressure in many people, increasing the risk of heart disease and stroke. Organizations such as the World Health Organization and the American Heart Association responded by encouraging populations to reduce excessive sodium consumption, particularly because processed foods had become a major source of hidden salt. That message was valuable. The problem came later. A careful recommendation gradually became a simple slogan. Too much salt can be harmful, slowly turned into, all salt is bad. Those two statements are not the same. Almost nobody talks about the difference, yet it changes the entire conversation. Peer-reviewed research consistently shows that sodium is an essential nutrient. Without it, your nerves cannot transmit signals normally, your muscles cannot contract efficiently, and your body cannot regulate fluid balance the way it was designed to. At the same time, consuming more sodium than your body needs over long periods can increase cardiovascular risk, especially in people who are sensitive to its effects or who already have conditions such as hypertension. The real lesson is not to fear sodium or celebrate it. The lesson is to understand it. Physiology is more nuanced than slogans. because human beings are more nuanced than slogans. Your age, your diet, your medications, your kidneys, your activity level, and your overall health all influence what balanced sodium intake looks like for you. Once you begin thinking in terms of biology instead of headlines, the debate becomes much less confusing. And that brings us to the practical question you have been waiting for since the beginning. So what does all of this actually look like when you pour your first glass tomorrow morning? Now we can finally answer the question that has been waiting quietly in the background since you picked up that first glass of water. Should you drink salt water every morning? For most people, the answer is not a simple yes or no. It is a thoughtful, it depends. If you eat a typical diet, there is a good chance you already consume enough, and sometimes more than enough, sodium throughout the day. In that situation, routinely adding extra salt to your morning water is unlikely to provide meaningful benefits and could increase your overall sodium intake unnecessarily. Your body is asking for balance, not excess. Begin instead with something much simpler. After waking, drink 1 glass of plain water, somewhere between 250 and 500 milliliters. Drink it at a comfortable pace rather than all at once. Give your body a few minutes to respond before reaching for another large glass. Remember, hydration is a process, not a race. Next, eat a balanced breakfast if your routine allows. Foods that naturally contain a healthy mix of sodium and potassium, along with protein and whole foods, help support normal fluid balance far better than relying on concentrated homemade salt drinks. Potassium-rich foods such as fruit, vegetables, yogurt, or beans work alongside sodium rather than competing with it, helping your cells maintain the balance they need. Then pay attention to your body's feedback instead of following internet trends. Ask yourself simple questions. Are you genuinely thirsty? Does your urine remain consistently dark despite drinking fluids? Do you become lightheaded when standing? Have you spent time exercising, working outdoors, or sweating heavily in hot weather? Those situations change your fluid needs in ways that a universal morning recipe cannot predict. There are times when replacing electrolytes, including sodium, becomes appropriate. Endurance exercise lasting well over an hour, prolonged sweating, certain illnesses involving vomiting or diarrhea, or individualized advice from your healthcare professional may justify a different hydration strategy. Those are specific physiological situations, not everyday rules for everyone. Equally important is knowing what to avoid. Be cautious of homemade recipes promoted online that recommend large amounts of salt without considering your age, diet, medications, or medical history. A recipe that appears harmless for one person may be entirely inappropriate for another. Biology does not follow social media trends. If you frequently experience dehydration, repeated episodes of dizziness when standing, unusually low blood pressure symptoms, or persistent concerns about hydration despite drinking adequate fluids, those are worthwhile conversations to have with your healthcare professional. Sometimes the underlying cause has little to do with water or sodium and much more to do with medications, hormone changes, heart function, or kidney health. That brings us to something I care deeply about mentioning because it reflects the very science we've discussed throughout this video. If you live with high blood pressure, chronic kidney disease, heart failure, liver disease, swelling in the legs or ankles, or if you take diuretics, ACE inhibitors, or other medications that influence fluid and electrolyte balance, this conversation belongs between you and your healthcare professional, not between you and a YouTube video. Your treatment plan is designed around your individual physiology, and intentionally increasing sodium without guidance may do more harm than good. The goal has never been to override your body's remarkable regulatory systems. It is to support them. Your kidneys, hormones, blood vessels, and cells already know how to work together with extraordinary precision. The healthiest habits are often the ones that cooperate with those systems rather than trying to outsmart them. That perspective may not fit neatly into a viral headline, but it is far more likely to serve you well every single morning. Now think back to where we started this morning. Circular close. Think back to that quiet kitchen where we began. The morning light is still reaching across the counter. The glass is still in your hand. From the outside, nothing has changed. Yet you have. You now know that this moment has never been just about drinking water or deciding whether to add salt. It is about understanding the remarkable conversation taking place between your kidneys, your hormones, your bloodstream, and every cell quietly depending on them to maintain balance. That simple choice repeats itself every single morning, 365 times each year. Small decisions, guided by sound science instead of popular slogans, have a way of accumulating almost unnoticed, until one day they become part of a healthier, steadier life. You do not need perfect habits. You do not need miracle solutions. You simply need the willingness to listen to what your body is actually asking for and to respond with patience rather than trends. And that quiet understanding is one of the most valuable investments you can make in your health as the years continue to unfold. Soft CTA number 2. If this kind of evidence-based explanation helps you better understand your body, consider staying with us. That's exactly what this channel is built around: careful science, practical guidance, and respectful conversations about healthy aging. We'll continue exploring the biology behind longevity,